Well, for the very final time this season, the NBA Breakdown is previewing some basketball action for Pinnacle. And you loyal listeners and viewers now on YouTube as well. Myself, James Gregg, the Athletics' Joe Vardon, Stats Bomb, Seth Partnow. And as always, you guys listening at home, we've got a great little treat, okay? Because it is obviously the NBA Finals. And the Denver Nuggets taking on the Miami Heat. It's the top seed in the West against a play-in tournament winner, which adds to a pretty cool narrative and obviously lots for us to talk about and digest. Game one gets underway on June the 1st. We're recording this on May the 30th, just so that you are absolutely clear as to when we are making these predictions. There's no after timing from us here. And less than 24 hours on since that incredible kind of finale to the semi-finals, this is where we are. We are here, and the showpiece awaits. And two teams, really, guys, that just couldn't really be further apart in their journey to this showpiece series, playing on the same court for the same trophy. So I think, I don't really know where to start, but I suppose we should go more recent and where you were, Joe, and you were there, present for it. And just give us your thoughts, because it's still relatively fresh in your mind.
It's entirely fresh in my mind. I just got off the plane from Boston to Denver. And most of the NBA's front office was at Game 7. And it just sort of felt like they were there almost to prepare for the finals. Because if it had the Celtics won Game 7, then Game 1 would have been there. And, I know we were talking off air, but I do think when you are a journalist, and you get into these series, we are constantly prisoners of the moment. We are constantly swayed by what happened immediately before. And so when that series was 3-0, we all assumed it would be 4-0 or over pretty quick. And then when the Celtics come all the way back and they won Game 6 the way they did in stunning fashion at a buzzer beater that almost never happens, you just assumed, with good reason, given numbers, that they would win Game 7. But the Heat played brilliantly on defense. They got a little bit of help with Jason Tatum getting hurt. And then they got one more stellar performance out of a completely unsung hero by a guy named Caleb Martin. And they found a formula to get through this one game and get to the finals. They're going to have to play completely different in this Denver series. I think Seth would agree with that. And I think we'll probably both pick Denver, not to jump right ahead, but and there's good reason for that. But the Heat, they just refuse to die. Like, they just refuse to lose. And so I think that's one of the factors we have to consider here, is that they're just so hot and they just don't care when anybody else says that. I mean, there's a little danger element to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Seth, I want to know what your thoughts are as well, and if that kind of varies from what Joe's seen.
So momentum is a funny thing. It's a funny concept. And I think what sort of Joe is describing, and I made light of this a little bit before Game 7 in like, boy, there've been a lot of stories about how, this speech or that team outing or whatever saved the Celtics season. It seemed a little gun jumpy, and it wasn't that I thought that's why. It wasn't like that was bulletin board material or anything. That's why but it's we get so caught up in this. Well, they've won the last couple, therefore they have the momentum. And I think in NBA playoff series, momentum in terms of this team has won the last couple of games, therefore they are likely to win the next game. There might be something to that, but I don't think it's an emotional thing. I think it's this team has figured something else out about the other team. And while the Celtics won Game 6, I sort of feel like the way that Miami came back and actually took the lead and almost won Game 6 was more an indication of Miami having figured Boston out than the reverse. So I think that, if you look at the 3, then the 3, it might tell you one thing, but in terms of who has the strategic ascendancy in the series, I think it's of course easy to say this in retrospect.
Of course it is, yeah.
but I think that confusing kind of the strategic momentum and emotional momentum, which is less of a real thing, at least at this level. Like these players who reach this level are pretty damn tough, like mentally.
Yeah.
So while there are certainly instances where players break, I think much more likely it's that there is something within the game itself that has broken one way or the other. And I think this was a useful reminder of that.
Yeah, certainly. And you know what, actually, watching this, I mean, I was engrossed in it, as a lot of people this side of the Atlantic were as well, by the way, which is kind of rare. You know, people invest a lot in the finals and that final 7 games potentially of the season. But up to that point, you know, the UK isn't really hot on it. But this comeback story was like that. However, I'm going to, after time, massively here and agree with you and do a retrospective look at how, you know, they didn't look inconsolable, the Heat, after game 6, right? And all right, they looked disappointed because it was like, oh my word, what is happening? But it wasn't you know, you couldn't foresee them ever stringing some decent basketball together ever again, right? And that's just me kind of watching it. And I definitely did think that at the time. I didn't think these guys are completely down. They have no chance in that final game. No chance. You know, there wasn't one part of me that thought that, which you sometimes see in other sport. So I kind of agree with you on that. You know, it is easy in retrospect, isn't it? When you said that, I was like, yeah, I feel that, because I've kind of been saying that today to people. But no, that's definitely a feeling I got as well. Look, we're going to come back and kind of talk about the last 4 teams and then obviously preview, you know, this showpiece that we've got ahead. Just a quick one to kind of jump around a little bit. What's going on around the leagues? Around the league, because former Raptors coach Nick Nurse, I mean, next 76ers head coach, has that been announced yet? I'm not sure. Time of recording, yes, has been. Wembanyama to Spurs. I mean, that's nearly nailed on. Again, has that been announced yet at time of recording? No. Okay.
They have asked teams to not even if you win the first pick in a draft with an obvious number 1 pick, I believe they have asked teams to not, you know, there used to be a thing where it was, Joe, you can probably remember when the last time this was, but when a certain like high enough profile pick is there, they have like the jersey, you know, the number 1 jersey with the team with, you know, whether it's O'Neal on the back or something like that.
Yeah.
That used to be a thing, but I think the league has asked teams to not do that anymore.
Okay.
Well, I know the Cavs did that with LeBron. The vice president of public relations had a jersey made and stuck it in his briefcase for the flight out to New Jersey from Cleveland for the draft lottery. And as the numbers started getting announced and it got down to where it was clear that Cleveland was going to win, he busted that thing out and gave it to Gordon Gunn to go like this, you know, when the Cavs. You know, the Spurs are going to take Victor. It's a fascinating story to go from Paris and everything that he's lived through there, good and bad, to a small community like San Antonio, entirely a culture shock. Playing for the oldest coach in the league and also hailed as the best coach ever. You know, can Greg Popovich in his last run here with the Spurs, after all that he's been through as a coach throughout his career, can he connect with a 19-year-old kid from Paris? I don't know. It's going to be fascinating. I mean, you know, all those great Spurs teams were built with international players, and he certainly was the linchpin for those teams. But you know, there's going to be a culture shock, and there's a generational gap that didn't exist with the Spurs teams of a couple decades ago. So I'm fascinated to see that. But also you feel good for Greg because I mean, 5-time winner, hailed as the greatest coach in NBA history. In the last couple of Spurs teams have just been awful. It's just been an awful experience, and he gets like a last breath of fresh air, and the next big thing is coming his way.
Yeah, that is cool. That is cool. We'll have to see how that pans out, of course. Right, let's have a little look back then. What does it mean for the losing teams? What does it mean for Boston, I suppose, first of all? I know we talked about Boston quite a lot on the last podcast. Does their team break up now? Was this their kind of biggest and best opportunity of, as we put it all the time, getting it done? Seth?
I mean, they had a pretty good opportunity last year as well. I mean, people forget that they were 6 minutes away from taking a 3-1 lead in the finals last year, and kind of some of the similar drawbacks as we've seen from the Celtics over and over again over the last few playoff runs is sort of the inability to close games out, and that almost bit them in Game 6 of this series. I think it more directly bit them in when you let a series get to 7 games as the supposedly better team, you're always at risk of something weird happening. And so many weird things happened. And Caleb Martin didn't miss a shot. I mean, he did a couple, but he basically I believe he was 8 of 9 on jumpers outside of 10 feet in Game 7. Truly spectacular performance. Your best player rolls an ankle. That can always happen. And so you got to look back to dropping games 1 or 2, which both of which were probably, they would look back and say those were winnable games. And this has been a pattern with the Celtics team over the years, like losing game 1 to Philadelphia with Joel Embiid not playing. Fine, they win that series in 7 games, but having to go 7 games, having to go 6 games against the Hawks. The inability to kind of take care of business every game. I think we've seen that is, especially when we're playing every other day, that puts an obstacle in front of you in the playoffs.
Yeah. Joe, next season, Celtics, thoughts?
Yeah, I'm with Tatum. I think that they've made it to 4 Eastern Conference Finals in his 6 seasons. That's really hard to do. And I think they're very close. I don't know that you can. I mean, we've talked about this before. I mean, there was at least a rumor of an offer to trade Jaylen Brown and I guess Marcus Smart or somebody like that for a Kevin Durant. And it didn't happen. And actually, memory is failing me now. I can't even remember what the report was as to why that fell through. But short of a trade like that, how do you get better moving away from Jaylen Brown? He had a horrible Game 7 last night. There's no doubt about that. But Seth is right. Like, when you get to a Game 7, especially against a team like the Heat, but whoever, when you get to a Game 7, anything can happen. Tatum can get hurt. The other best guy can start throwing the ball away. And you are a prisoner of the circumstances that you created earlier in the series. They need to be a little more disciplined. They had a rookie coach this year who didn't have as much experience as an assistant as the previous rookie coach, who did really well. But it's a deep, solid team that's going to be really expensive. And they are so close that I feel like any step back, I feel like they owe it to themselves and to this group to keep going until it becomes clear that they can't win with this group. And I don't think that's at all clear.
That point's not arrived. Like, this is the ceiling. That's not a point that we're at yet with them. Okay.
I think that I think we do have to. This is something that happens pretty frequently, where a team has a several-year run together, where they're good enough to basically have won a title any given year in that stretch, and just for whatever reason they didn't get it done. I think the James Harden Rockets certainly fall into that. The Mike D'Antoni, Steve Nash Suns are another team where that actually might be almost the closest comparison to the Celtics in that they were probably the best team a couple of years, and just like stuff happened. It's like Steve Nash gets checked into the scorers table, and a couple of guys come off the bench and get suspended, and early in that run, like one of your key players takes a bad fall and breaks his face. One of their first runs that with Joe Johnson, and it just sort of seems that you need a little bit of luck to go all the way, and the Celtics all you can really do is put yourself in that situation over and over again. And yes, you can still improve, but they're not that many breaks away from things going the other way.
Yeah, definitely one to monitor, isn't it, over the summer and just kind of see what happens. We don't really expect too much kind of change there, do we? Which kind of brings me neatly on to the Lakers. What does losing this series, but losing the series in a sweep, mean going forwards for them? I mean, we talk about? I just mentioned the word ceiling there. Was the conference finals their ceiling this season? I look back on all the conversations that we've had throughout the season. It probably was, really, in hindsight, wasn't it?
Well, but not because of them so much as, I mean, I think Denver is great and also a terrible matchup for the Lakers. And yet that was a close series. And that sounds ridiculous, but they, in all 4 games, those were close games that the Lakers were in. Jokic, I would argue, dramatically outplayed Anthony Davis. And yes, I know that Anthony scored 41 in the first game, but I didn't think that he answered the individual challenge of guarding Jokic as much as the Lakers needed. And otherwise, Denver's just really deep and they're poised to go here and probably win it all. So the Lakers were put together on the fly. I've said they did a great job at that, considering where they were. So I think this was a positive development for the Lakers to get as far as they did. LeBron had a tough year injury wise, and you're starting to wonder how much he can hold up. When he is healthy, he's still really good. You need a little bit more out of Davis, but that's another team where I just feel like they are not that far away with what they've built.
Okay, interesting. Seth,
have they learned from a management perspective? Have they learned the lessons of the last 4 years? In a lot of ways, this team that they put together at the end was closer to the blueprint that won them the 2020 title as anything. And you put younger athletes who can shoot and defend around 2 players like LeBron and AD. And I think at LeBron's age and frankly Ed Davis's age too, as he's someone who is in his early 30s and has had a lot of injuries over his career. So I think that there are, whether just in terms of games played or otherwise, he might be slowing down a little bit too. You might need a little more help with it for them, but let's see what happens when they go into training camp next year, knowing, hey, Austin Reeves is a dude for us. This is a guy who, when we need to give those other guys a little bit of a rest off the ball, he can get stuff done for us. Going with that as a piece, adding like the size and athleticism and shooting at the other positions that they for 2.5 years completely eschewed in the name of going after big name du jour. Basically, like what I'm gonna be looking at for them is how big do the Kyrie Irving rumblings get over the summer.
Okay.
The louder those get, the less I think they've learned their lesson.
That's a good one.
I mean, we haven't brought it up, but at the end of Game 4 in that series, LeBron mentioned that he was considering retirement. And there's been any number of theories offered as to why he said that, when the most likely thing is he was feeling beat up physically and emotionally, and just that he said what was on his mind at that particular time. But of all the theories that are out there, the one that I disagree with is that he was trying to make some kind of leverage play. I think that is an insult to him, but also to the Lakers and to the partnership that those two entities have had over his time there. The Lakers have done right by him. They built correctly around him and won a title. They brought in Anthony Davis, who he wanted, but then they kept going with Dwight and JaVale. Danny Green was on that championship team. They were big and they could shoot. That's what you want with LeBron. Then they listened to LeBron and went and made the trades that he wanted to be made so that Russell Westbrook would be a teammate. And you could say, well, there was drama when the Lakers didn't move off from Russell quickly enough, but that was not feasible to move off from him as quickly as LeBron wanted him to. And again, Russell was only there because LeBron stomped his feet and made it happen. The fact that they moved on from him eventually and the way that they did it, who they brought in, was again a service to LeBron. And you know, they're not hoarding assets. They're not planning for the future. Like, they're trying to build around him to win now. So I just think, and I believe that LeBron does respect the relationship and partnership with the Lakers, but that is what it's been. And so no, so of all the reasons that he may have said that, I think that one is the least likely.
Okay. Well, there we go. Look, we're going to focus on the finals here. We've got plenty of time to chew the fat, obviously, before the start of the new season when that comes around. Which, well, come on, let's not even think about that yet. Okay, right. Just to direct listeners towards it, they know the drill by now. Pinnacle.com. We've got the best of 7 series odds. You've got the game odds as well. Have a look at those. There's obviously not loads to look at because it's just one series here that we're talking about. How's it all going to unfold? You know, is it Jokic who's going to get that championship title? Is it going to be the Heat adding another ring to their collection? You know, Miami might not have the same roster depth as Denver, especially with the 3-point specialist as well, Tyler Herro watching from the sidelines with a broken hand. But what they do, of course, have is an abundance of experience. So, right, where do we go at? I mean, how do you see it unfolding? I suppose I think we're all clear that Denver are the favorites. That's exactly what it is with Pinnacle as well, for obvious reasons. Talk to us about Denver then. I suppose both of you, let's just talk to us about Denver. They're the favorites. We've all said it so far on this podcast recording. So yeah, why? Just simply why? Why are they the favorites?
Best player wins, and they have the best player in the world right now on their team. I think that any questions that there were existing about Nikola Jokic's ability to be a dominant force in the postseason, I think we have well and truly put those to bed. And for as good as Jimmy Butler has been, across the playoffs as a whole, I mean, even when he's played bad, Jokic has been great. I mean, just the sheer physicality that he's brought to the table. And I think that's that. You mentioned, Joe. You mentioned that Anthony Davis didn't do as well defensively. I thought he struggled even more offensively, largely because of Jokic's physicality. Like Anthony Davis tried to go through him, and Jokic is an enormous human being who just didn't move. So I mean, I think when you start, and I think you have to start there. That best player wins is a good place to start looking at a series. And for as great as Jimmy Butler has been and is, Jokic is a level above.
You agree with that, Joe?
I feel like we should spend as much time as we have left, like just talking about the Nuggets. Like we owe it to them. We've been saying, oh, by the way, we think the Nuggets are great all year.
That is true, actually. You are right.
Around with the Lakers and whoever else, the Bucks, on and on. Denver, it does start with Jokic, but I think it also starts with Jokic against the Heat. I am certainly in the camp that I don't want to put a lot of stock into what happens in the regular season, but these two teams only play twice a year. And if you look at the individual matchup, that is a matchup that Jokic routinely wins, and he wins handily. And this is probably the smallest of Miami teams going up against the Nuggets since those two have been in the league. I'm talking about Joker and Bam Adebayo. If Bam gets in any foul trouble at all, the Heat have nothing. There's nothing they could do. Like the other bigs they have on the roster, Kevin Love and Cody Zeller, just simply cannot move with the speed that Jokic moves. Beyond that, as Seth and I know, the Heat employed an effective zone against the Celtics throughout the series that we just got through. You can't do that to Jokic. He's too good of a shooter. He will beat you when you get into that zone. So that is a huge matchup problem. The second huge matchup problem is Aaron Gordon, because he is massive. and plays the 4, but he can also move. He's much bigger than Caleb Martin, who's 6'5". And so if we recall, Caleb was coming off the bench for the Heat for the first 5 games of the conference finals. Then they started to start him. If you go back to Kevin, you get your size and you might get some spacing back because Denver's bigger than the Celtics were. But I just don't like that matchup either. And we haven't even talked about Jamal Murray yet, who is an all-star caliber player, and he's playing great in these playoffs. Michael Porter Jr., you think that Jimmy Butler wins that matchup. I think the Heat have a couple decisions to make about how big they want to go, and then does Max Strus stay on the floor? Do you see a scenario where they actually play Caleb and Jimmy together with Gabe and then the 2 bigs? Is that an answer? And bring Strus off the bench. Denver just has so many different ways they could beat you. And then the thing they have that they never had when they went to the conference finals, when they went to the conference semifinals, is they have Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who is a wing defender, and he can shoot threes. He is, to me, I think he is the actual X factor for the Nuggets and in this series, just because of his existence. He's the thing they didn't have the previous years when they were good, and now they have him. So this is to say this would be a formidable challenge for the Heat, I think is an understatement.
I think there's I want to piggyback on what Joe's saying is you're talking about the Heat making adjustments by moving players in and out of the lineup. And between those 5 starters for Denver and Bruce Brown, they can play so many different ways with just those 6 guys without having to make a sub. Well, we can try this. We can try, putting Jokic as the ball handler in a pick and roll with either Jamal Murray or Bruce Brown screening for him, and do all these interesting things. We can try. We don't have to make subs. We can just play our best guys. We know who our best guys are. We can play them and try a bunch of different things. Whereas the Heat are always having to make these trade-offs. Okay, you can put Kevin Love in. Maybe it works because Aaron Gordon, you're okay letting him shoot a little bit, but now you're giving up your own driving kick game. You're giving up transition speed. It's one of the best things that the Nuggets have is Aaron Gordon's ability to run the floor and get easy buckets just by running straight at the rim. So there's all these choices and trade-offs that Miami has to make that Denver just doesn't. They can just try stuff and have it not cost them. And I think that is a huge advantage from, that's part of having a more talented team is you have kind of more options without actually having to change who's on the floor.
Do we think that this is going to be an absolute pasting? Like a flat out and out, just done within 4, not a problem, easy, crowning moment, happy days? Or is there going to be, can you see it, logically, feasibly, can you see it being tight at all? Why are you laughing, mate? Come on.
No, because before the Eastern Conference Finals, when you recorded, I think if you guys recall, I called it like there's a difference between my head and my heart on this series, and there's like, okay, my head says Boston's much better, my heart doesn't trust them, and it does trust Miami. There's a little bit of that in this series, in that my head says Denver is much better, but the heart part is more, well, maybe Miami can make it a series, not maybe Miami can, like, I would be barring like an injury, I would be absolutely stunned if Miami won this series.
Yes.
I would be as surprised as I would have been had they beat the Lakers in the bubble. That's how big I think a gap as I see it between these teams. And that's no disrespect intended to Miami. Denver's been among the top 3 best teams in the league all season, and they've been easily the best team start to finish in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's something actually. I know that Joe was absolutely right a moment ago, wasn't he? All season we've talked about other teams, teams on the cusp, teams looking to try and, just wriggle into the play-in, for goodness sake. And then rounded it off, we've got a minute left. Denver, all right, aren't they? Yeah, sound. See you next time. Which is, we have done a massive disservice, really. But I think that's probably because we just knew, that it's solid, dependable, not really, the results have kind of spoke for themselves. Joe, do you agree with that in the sense that there is a small inkling that this isn't going to be a complete, done after 4 games.
Well, I mean, the Heat have earned our respect and attention just by how they refuse to quit. I mean, this is a team that almost lost the last play-in game, and now they're in the finals. But I wanted to say that like the NBA in a way is becoming like our American political system, and just that everything that we thought we knew was true about how to read tea leaves and how to measure things has totally disappeared. And if the Heat are not wiped out, then the last shreds of like the regular season meaning anything, and the better, deeper team with no real weaknesses losing, like that like if those two things fall, then I don't even know what we can say about the current NBA. So I just think there has to be some normalcy restored here at the end, and the talent discrepancy, and then the specific pressure points of the matchup should be Denver big. Jimmy could go for 51 in game 1, and then Joker gets hurt in game 2, and now you got a series.
Yeah.
You always say that, but it's got to be Denver. It's got to be Denver.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? I mean, outside looking in, it's got to be. But yeah, it's look at Seth says,
a friend of mine from Denver texted me today and was like, does Miami really have a chance in this series? And my answer was no, asterisks.
Yeah,
because like
it's good.
Like I think if nothing else, Miami just by sheer bloody mindedness has earned at least the benefit of that. Like I don't see it, but they've done enough things that I haven't seen in advance that we at least have to give them the possibility that between Spo and Jimmy they can conjure something up, and away we go again.
Yeah, there's plenty of storylines around it, and it's it's a bit of a lesson for those teams who were so near these as well, isn't it? In many ways, that they can probably learn quite a bit off the Miami Heat in the way that they've just been really gritty and kind of getting to this point, and we still don't know. As much as we're saying it's all Denver, you still don't know. It's gonna be a cracker. I mean, just before we go, a quick word. I mean, this has got to be Nikola Jokic's his defining crowning moment if it does work out how we all think it's going to, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like Seth said at the beginning, and I mean, he's right in a way. I think that Jokic lost a bunch of MVP votes because people said, well, we don't want to be on the wrong side of history when he flops in the playoffs, which was unwarranted. That's not why I voted for Embiid, but at any rate, he's about to end any question, question, and he will be talked about beginning this summer as one of the all-time greats, a 2-time MVP with surely more to come, and at least one title.
Yeah. Seth, crowning moment
so far.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay.
This Denver team is pretty well situated to win now, and you can always improve, but they've got a pretty solid base to move forward. And when you start with one of the 2 or 3 best players on the planet, you have a leg up on everybody. So you don't want to get ahead of yourselves. They still got to do this one, but I don't necessarily like writing the story of a player's career while it's still going, especially someone who's got 5+ years left at his peak, like Jokic does. We don't like. This could be the start of his crowning period, not just like the peak itself.
Think how many times that's happened to LeBron, though. How many like career look backs there have been, and then he goes
right.
Another one.
We'll have to see. It's fascinating, guys. Thank you so much for all your expert insight all season long. We've had so much fun. We'll do it all again very soon, sooner than actually we think. Seth, Joe, thanks so much. And also for you for listening as well. I know that there's many of you across the globe who do listen to this religiously every single time we do check in with one another. And sometimes we're right, sometimes we're completely miles off it, but hopefully it always provides a little bit of insight and entertainment for you. Enjoy the NBA finals, and remember all odds that we actually didn't talk about there, just directed you to where they were, but they are always correct at the time of recording. Pinnacle.com, and of course plenty more betting resources on there as well. Enjoy the rest of the season, and we'll talk to you very soon. Cheers now.